thank you so much for joining me. And this is A Course in Miracles 365 Awakening to Love. I'm Tomás Garza, your host, and coming to you from a slightly different time here on Friday. So I hope you're having a great, well, it's not Friday. So I've got this time frame down for Friday for some other reason back in time. It's Wednesday today. And this is a really, really funny and really wonderful point. What actually is a day? Yeah. What is Wednesday? What is Friday? I wanted to wish you all a happy Friday. So apparently somewhere in my mind on some timeline or another, it's Friday in my world. So it really brings to my mind a really fun and a really interesting point is that we've made all of this stuff up. This fits in perfectly well with today's idea that we're going to be talking about, is the fact that we've made everything up. So when you really think about it, what is Wednesday? What does that actually mean? What does Friday actually mean? Besides, the end of a Monday through Friday work week and maybe a party. I don't know, right? You could have that party right now. Perhaps you're partying it up as we speak. And I hope you're having fun if that's the case. But where I'm going with this is we see so many different concepts in the world that we don't even think about. And they have meaning that we've assigned to them. But what actually is Wednesday but a word? What is Friday but a word? What is day but a word? Yeah, we make up so many different things. In fact, we've made up, as we've seen in A Course in Miracles, we've made up the entire thing. Oh, yeah. Everything, made it all up. And we got together and agreed on what the so-called rules were going to be, didn't we? We agreed that we're going to be going through this cycle, whatever a cycle is. It's a word, yeah. An experience that we're having of 24 things called hours. And there are 7 of those things that we call days in this thing that we call a week, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We use them to order our experience. We made them all up. So with that, happy Friday 2 days in advance to you here. And I want to just take a moment and welcome you and thank you all for joining me here, whether you've been catching this live stream actually as I go live or on the replay. I've really heard a lot of really wonderful comments and questions from all of you from all over the world. So I thank you so much for tuning in, for your comments, questions. Feel welcome to leave them here in the comment thread as always, and I will get to them while we're live here. And also, if you're catching the replay, I'll get to them later on today, because I do check them. It's fun for me to have an interactive dialogue and for people to share their own experience, just as I'm doing. This is what I'm doing as a teacher. I'm sharing my own experience with all of you, and in hopes that something I say is going to resonate with you. It's going to inspire you to take action and practice in your own world, in your own life. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate that. So where we are is we're in the midst of some heavy-hitting ideas in the workbook for students. Yeah. Today's lesson 96 is particularly deep. And I love it. In fact, they all are deep. And if you're following along, if you've been following along since we began, then you'll know that one idea builds on another. So yesterday, lesson 95 on this live stream, we talked about I am oneself united with my creator, right? Self with a capital S, creator, of course, with a capital C. Now, so today, lesson 96, the idea for today is salvation comes from my one self. All right. Salvation comes from my one self. Self, again, capital S. Yeah. So I think that if you're watching this, it's pretty clear to me, and I have met some of you. I have not met some of you. I've chatted with some of you online and in social media. Some of you I've not chatted with. But if you're watching this, it's pretty clear that you have an idea what's meant by your one self with a capital S, or you would be watching anything else on YouTube. And they've got a lot of content out there. So you're here for a reason. And that tells me with pretty much 100% certainty that you know what we're talking about here. Salvation comes from my one self with a capital S. It does not come from all of the extraneous things and stuff that we use to populate our world, that we use to occupy our time, that we use to occupy our energy and our hearts and our minds and our attention. Salvation does not come from those. And what do I mean, salvation? Well, I mean the experience of who you really are, like the ongoing experience. Glimpses are fine. One starts with glimpses, and then we continue to practice and make that experience constant. So happiness, yeah, right? The experience of who we really are comes from our one self. Now let's talk about what A Course in Miracles means by that, because as you've seen, and as you may know, this course uses some terms very differently than people often conceive of them and use them in ordinary language, in common parlance. They're quite different things a lot of the time. And what we do in the world is we're running around. We're running around on an endless, seemingly endless, in fact, it, of course, is not going to be permanent, but it feels like it is. But we're running around, constantly dissatisfied. We'll try something thinking it's going to get us the results that we want, and put our faith in that, put our life's energy, our blood, sweat, and tears in that, because this could be in a career. Yeah, it could be a career that we devote a certain part of our lives to in work. We see ourselves all the time as torn and in conflict. We see ourselves as good and bad, as masculine and feminine. We see ourselves as good and evil, right? We see ourselves in terms of polarity, mind and body, as the workbook mentions. We see ourselves as jostling back and forth between two apparent opposites. And we're in this state. When we're in this state, we're seeking our salvation, our happiness in external objects. We're seeking it in the next greatest thing, in the next course that someone offers. Right? We're seeking it in the next seminar, in the next relationship, in the next fad diet, for example. Yeah, we're seeking it where we can't find it because the solution's not there. Why? Lesson 96. Yeah, salvation comes from our one self, united with our Creator, as we saw yesterday. Okay. So the truth that we all must accept here in the world is that truth and illusion cannot be reconciled. That must be accepted before we can really begin to make what we consider to be progress or growth on the spiritual path. This is something that we need to have presented to us, I don't know, 1,000 times, and maybe time 1001 we'll get it. And maybe you don't need it that often. Maybe you have already had this realization, and that's a beautiful thing. If you've really had that realization and you've stabilized it, and made it constant, then please message me so I can have you as a guest on the show. Yeah, because we'd love to hear from you. This is work that we're all doing right now. It's work that we're all doing. And you may feel like, oh gosh, I really have so far to go. Well, maybe you don't have as far to go as you think. We're our own worst critics. And what it's tempting for people to do, and I know this, is that people tend to beat themselves up for not being as far along on the path as they think that they should be. Well, So few of us can actually sit and meditate for 3 or 4 minutes and acquire the wisdom of a great sage, of Buddha, of Jesus. Um, yeah, most of us need more time. And happily, according to A Course in Miracles, that is the function of time, is to give ourselves this opportunity to wake up. It's what it's for. Yeah, it's what it's for. Truth and illusion cannot be reconciled because only one of them is true, yes? I mean, that stands to logical reason. Who said spirituality and logic were divorced from one another? No, they're not, right? Only truth is true. It says that in several places in the Course. Only truth is true, right? Truth and illusion cannot be reconciled. What's the illusion? Separation. Separation, and all of the experiences that we have as an apparently separate physical body that stem from this separation. Now, one of the beautiful things that I love, absolutely love about A Course in Miracles, and if you're studying this actively, I really, really want to highlight this. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, is that this separation is a mistake. It's not a sin worthy of punishment, which should be really relieving to all of us, right? It was a relief to me when I picked up A Course in Miracles 8 years ago and read this in many different places because it had always resonated with me. Separation's a mistake. It's a mistake only. It's not a blasphemous punishment against God, which renders us scum, basically, deserving of death, unworthy of love, unworthy of salvation, unworthy of knowing ourselves. It's not that. It's just a mistake. So what happens when we make a mistake? Well, if we're open to having that mistake corrected, then you grow. So truth and illusion cannot be reconciled. And that's true, no matter how hard we try, no matter how many next seminars, next courses, next relationships, next meals, next brand new cars, next this, that, and the other we try to focus on. That's not where our salvation comes from. It comes from our one self. That we see ourselves as torn between mind and body. Well, in truth, we're neither. All right, we're not the body. Course in Miracles says that in many different places. That is ultimately the truth. We appear to be here in them. Yeah, they are very important communication mechanisms. So it is very important to take care of them. It is very important for all of us to optimize and maximize the opportunity that we have to communicate with one another through this thing that we call a body. It's a communication tool. It can be given to the service of love or the service of the ego. That is part of our choice between love and fear. It's God or the ego. So the body serves whichever choice we make. It serves our guide, basically, which is either love or fear. It's either God or the Holy Spirit here in Course in Miracles terminology, or it's the ego. It's fear. It's a sense of separate self. So which do we give the body over to? Which purpose is it going to serve? That is the purpose that it serves. So are you using it in service of love? That's the question that we all have to answer, moment to moment, all the time. So in the practice period for today's idea, we practice, and the Course recommends every hour that you're awake, of course, for 5 minutes. Now, this may be something that you are not able to do for reasons of work schedule, or maybe the kids' time, or maybe you forget or something. But, whether you do it exactly to the letter or not, doesn't really, truly, ultimately matter. As soon as you realize you've forgotten the day's idea, come back to it. Just like you do when you're in a meditation practice and you discover that your thoughts have wandered off. What do? If you're focusing on the breath, well, you bring your attention back to the breath. If you're focusing on sound or a mantra or singing bowls, you bring your awareness and attention back to the sounds that you hear. This is exactly the same. It's a living, breathing, waking meditation. It's a living meditation. Just remind yourself, salvation comes from my one self. Now, in these practice periods, we sit and we recite, salvation comes from my one self. Its thoughts are mine to use. It's a statement of power, yeah? That's very powerful. Its thoughts are mine to use. So we recite that and we receive. We await the answer. No, the answer does not necessarily come like a trumpet from the heavens. It doesn't necessarily come in the form of words. It might be a sound that you hear. It might be a feeling or a gut intuitive hit that you get. It could come in any number of forms. The messenger takes any number of forms, but the answer will come. It will come if you put yourself in this position to ask for and receive it. You know, each of us needs, of course, all of us, myself included, need to work on our allowing and receiving. That's part of spiritual practice for us. That's part of the journey for all of us. And we've seen in A Course in Miracles that we're not a body, nor actually are we our thinking, logical mind. We are spirit, one self, as we saw yesterday, united with our Creator. We use the mind and we use the body as tools to further whichever choice we make, to further, if you prefer the word goal, you can use that. The mind and the body simply follow the choice that we make. We put it to good use, or we put it to harmful and painful use. And at best, in the harmful and painful use, we don't go anywhere. We just keep running around, recirculating again and again and again until we formulate the decision to pop out of that cycle of frustration, because it really is. And you know, I know that many of you can relate to this. There really is a low-grade kind of gnawing, tooth grinding frustration that goes along with constantly choosing the ego. It doesn't know what it wants, ultimately doesn't exist anyway, and is never satisfied. Happily, there is an alternative to that hamster wheel. There's an alternative to the round of suffering, and in Buddhism we call it the round of cyclic existence, birth and rebirth in Eastern philosophy. There's an alternative to that. Happily, yeah, there's a way out, and salvation comes from my one self. All right, so thank you all for tuning in here. I want to take a quick look and see who is popping on live and joining me here today, which I apparently willingly thought was Friday. I tried to move us a couple of days ahead in time. If you didn't catch the beginning of this, I said, well, happy Friday, everybody. And I don't know why I did that, but it's Wednesday. And Pat and Stephanie, hello. Thank you all for tuning in. And hi, Hope. Hi, thank you for joining me. And Stephanie, yes, good afternoon, guys. If either any of you have questions for me or comments about spiritual practice, about A Course in Miracles in general, please feel welcome to leave them here on the comment thread, because I do check this from time to time throughout the day. And we're moving ahead with these beautiful ideas in the workbook for students. As you're noticing, each of them is very deep. Not exciting, very deep, and possibly very thought-provoking, with a suggestion for how to go about practicing that idea, implementing that, and applying that to your life. Now, each day has that, and the ideas themselves are beautiful even on your own if you do nothing else but bring your mind back to the actual verbatim text of the idea every day. That in and of itself is of tremendous value. In the workbook, it says it adds to your treasure house, your store of treasures, and it really does. Every time you remember it, this is one of the beautiful things, very beautiful things about spirituality, is that nothing is wasted. A one breath meditation adds to the treasure house. Right? It is significant. It's highly significant. So whether you are involved in big things according to you, or things that seem, more mundane, short, they all count, and nothing is ever wasted here. So even if all you do is remember, hey, salvation comes from my one self, that's of tremendous value. And over the course of time, over the course of years, you cannot underestimate the value of returning your mind to the object of meditation, to the day's lesson, to love, to the truth of who you are. Each time you bring your mind back, you grow, you transform, and that is what most of us would think of as progress being made spiritually. It's even recalling the day's idea. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back here tomorrow. We're going to continue with these highly, highly profound ideas here in the workbook. Thank you all for joining me, and have a great rest of your day.